Hello everyone, Gremlin Lord here, and welcome to another Regal Mystery Movie review. Today's movie played on September 30th, 2024, and the movie was White Bird. A grandmother shares her story of her attempts to escape Nazi-controlled France. She details the pain and strife, but also the kindness and compassion. Young Zara finds friendship and her first love while being sheltered in the barn of Julian and his family. A story about doing the right thing, even when the punishment is death.
Rated PG-13.
This movie was a weird choice of Regal to pick, since technically it's a spin-off/sequel to a 2017 movie called Wonder, which is about a boy who gets bullied for his facial differences. Now technically it's a book series that started in 2012, with this current iteration, White Bird, being released in 2019 as a graphic novel. As someone who didn't actually see the movie Wonder, the connection to this film seemed really weird. The movie opens with a boy finding trouble fitting into a new school. Apparently, this boy is the bully from the movie Wonder. It's an unusual angle to take considering the 7 years between the films, and the boy is now much older. We're given a very brief, and I mean brief, history of the previous movie through some very poor dialogue. Honestly, I feel like it would have made more sense if this was a standalone film. However, since it's based on a book series, I can understand the connection. It just wasn't well done and felt so incomplete. I don't know why Regal would pick a sequel for its Regal Mystery movie. Even though the movie brings back 2 stars from the previous film, they are not the main characters. They're merely a vehicle to move forward the actual main characters of Zara Bloom and Julian Beaumier. Zara Bloom is played by Ariella Glazer, an only child of a well-off Jewish family in the French countryside. Glazer portrays Zara as a slightly spoiled but mostly polite young girl. She sees Julian getting bullied, but she doesn't do anything to stop it. In fact, she's quite infatuated with his bully. Zara is also shown to be a budding artist. Ariella Glazer's performance is very nice, though on occasion, I hoped for more. Julian Beaumier was played by Orlando Schwert, and all I have to say is that his performance was phenomenal. He's meek while getting bullied, calm and kind as he helps Zara, and courageous when he stands up to the Germans. It was this whirlwind performance that I just wasn't expecting. And I just have to say that he is so adorable. Adorable. Aww. He has this cherub angelic face and this sweet demeanor that makes it impossible to not root for him. Julian has polio and walks with a crutch, which of course leads to bullying. The other kids call him Tortue, which is a way of saying crab in French. He and his family take in Zara after the roundup in town. Orlando Schwert brings such compassion to this role of Julian that he actually rivals some of the more tenured actors. The supporting cast is also good, though quite limited. Helen Mirren plays the elder version of Zara, aka the grandmother of the bully from the movie Wonder. Mirren gives a solid performance as you would expect, but she's mostly limited to narration and a few cuts back to the present day. Her grandson Julian, named after the Julian of the main story, is played by Bryce Gaysar. His role is even smaller, mostly just sitting, listening, and crying. Rounding out these smaller roles is Gillian Anderson, who plays Vivian Beaumier, mother of Julian Beaumier, the Julian in the past. It's another expected solid performance, but again, very limited. The movie opens with present-day Julian struggling to fit in at his new school. His grandmother is in town for a retrospective show about her art and is staying with him. In an attempt to teach him kindness, she tells him the story of her youth in 1940s France. The viewer is transported back in time, and this is where most of the movie takes place. Zara and her parents live in a small town in the French countryside. Even though Paris fell to the Germans years before, their town was considered a safe area where occupation was almost non-existent. Of course, that doesn't last long. And this is where my biggest gripe with the film begins. Almost 90% of this movie is completely predictable. Now, this could be because of how familiar I am with World War II lore, or how this type of story has been shown to us hundreds of times before. I understand that thousands of people had to experience these atrocities, and their stories do deserve to be told. But speaking strictly as a film reviewer, this predictability hurts what otherwise would have been a better film. For example, as the Germans moved to town and things became less safe, the Bloom family didn't leave. In fact, they agreed to stay just one more day. And as you can predict, that one more day is one day too many. And this happens so much throughout the movie, where a character performs this action and you know exactly what the consequences are going to be. There are no surprises throughout this film. And it just wasn't the results that were predictable, it's also the characters' reactions. It often felt like the movie was just going through a playbook, hitting all the usual notes with no variation. Even with all this predictability, there were a few moments where the movie was able to stand on its own two legs. There was a broken down truck in the barn where Julian was hiding Zara. The two would sit in it and visualize what their life would be driving around in other places in the world. The audience is shown these fantasies and they're really fun and creative. The cinematography here is quite imaginative. The camera swoops all around the truck, showing us both the visions and the reality. It was a really sweet way of bringing the childhood wonder to the forefront of this otherwise somber movie. In addition to that, there were some fantasy elements. Early on, we are introduced to a white bird, hence the title. It appears to Zara during her more stressful times. It's like a sign of hope. The viewer doesn't actually know if the bird is real, or it's just a way for Zara to self-soothe. There are also somewhat mystical wolves in the forest that make a few appearances. They show up at just the right moment, too. Again, we don't know if these were fact or fiction. They could be real, or they could be a rationalization of a young girl whose world is falling apart. Also, during the credits, we are shown scenes from the original graphic novel. It was a cool way to look at the source material. The overall theme of the movie and the message that the grandmother is trying to instill in her grandson is that kindness lives forever. That a simple act of kindness can completely change someone's life. For Zara, it's the kindness of Julian and his family protecting her in the barn. That act of kindness allowed her to survive, flourish, and live a long and fulfilling life. It also allowed her to tell this story to her grandson. And acts of kindness don't have to be as large as this. They could be smaller things, like holding the door, letting someone in the traffic, or giving somebody a compliment. Situations arise daily where we can offer a little grace and kindness in our reactions. Edmund Burke 1770 once said, "When bad men combine, the good must associate, else they will fall, one by one, an unpitied sacrifice in a contemptible struggle." This brings to mind the global promise of never again. The idea that this type of evil cannot be allowed to flourish again. But in reality, many overlook the warning signs and march blindly into darkness. The movie also touches upon that, subtly referencing current events. This might hit a little too close for some people. In the end, Whitebird is an emotional tale about a young girl's survival and a young boy's kindness, and how society can learn lessons from the past. It is generally a fine film that is sure to entertain you and tug on your heartstrings. But for me, it was just all too familiar, like watching the echoes of past movies. It was a very paint-by-the-numbers tale with little flourish. And that is why I'm giving the Regal mystery movie White Bird a 5.5 out of 10. I know, that is quite a low score, and most reviewers would probably give it about a 7 or 8 or even higher. And I can completely understand why they would. It is charming and heartwarming, and there's some great characters in it. But it just didn't fully work for me. And it's not because it's bad, because it most certainly is not. It's just that the predictability sucked all the wonder out of it for me. So, did you see the Regal mystery movie White Bird? If so, flutter down and leave me a comment. And don't forget that liking and subscribing are acts of kindness and great ways to change my life just a little bit. I'll see you next time. And be nice to each other out there, okay?